Everyone thought the battle was over, until the prisoner turned into a monster. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. Seeing the large man's unwavering confidence in the hall's restrictions, Han Li merely blinked, choosing not to say anything further. Old Man Ma, however, remained unconvinced by the bald man's words and frowned deeply. Han Li smiled faintly and suddenly spoke, his tone calm and composed. To be honest, although this matter is somewhat troublesome, it is far from something worth excessive worry. Given Han Li's previous achievements, the bald man did not dare dismiss him lightly. After a brief hesitation, he asked, "What does Brother Han mean by that?" Old Man Ma also turned toward Han Li, his face filled with surprise. Han Li rubbed his chin thoughtfully and replied, "The leaders of our alliances must already be aware that Mulan spies have infiltrated Heavenly South. They must have captured such individuals before. So long as this high-grade cultivator truly was a spy, the controlling spirit sect will not be able to make much of a fuss over it. After all, we come from different alliances. Most cultivators will not believe that we deliberately framed an elder of the controlling spirit sect. All we need to do is explain the situation clearly and submit the information we obtained from the Mulan. Once the alliances verify its authenticity, this matter should naturally come to rest." Moreover, Han Li continued evenly, "The controlling spirit sect itself must already harbor suspicions toward Elder Gu. No matter how meticulous he was, it would have been impossible for him to conceal everything flawlessly for so many years. Even if doubts have not yet fully formed, traces of irregularities should certainly be discoverable in his past movements." Hearing this, the bald man's tense expression finally relaxed. He suddenly produced a white jade slip from his hand, his expression somewhat peculiar. "Brother Han's reasoning is sound. I also used a secret technique to record his earlier words within this jade slip. When the time comes, it can serve as solid evidence." After listening to Han Li's explanation and seeing the jade slip, Old Man Ma finally let out a breath he had been holding. "That should suffice. It is unfortunate that fellow Taoist Bu was unable to appear as a witness. His injuries were too severe, forcing him to remain in hiding, but that should not pose any real obstacle." With that, the three continued to discuss the matter in greater detail. Suddenly, sharp hissing sounds echoed from within the silver light barrier. Startled, all three exchanged bewildered glances. Just as the bald man was about to take action, a violent explosion of flames erupted from inside the barrier. A massive green claw shot out like lightning, slamming into the light barrier and causing it to shudder violently. "What is this? He still has enough strength to shake the restriction," the bald man cried out in disbelief, his face paling in shock. He immediately formed a series of incantation seals and struck the barrier with a white spell talisman. The countless blossoms of light instantly dissipated, revealing the scene within. The bald man and Old Man Ma felt a chill race through their hearts. Even Han Li's expression darkened. Gu Shuangpu was gone. In his place stood a grotesque half-man, half-demon serpent monstrosity. The creature still wore Gu Shuangpu's robes, yet its face and limbs were completely covered in green scales. Its eyes glowed with an icy, eerie light, and its 10 fingers ended in razor-sharp claws. Behind it, 2 serpentine tails, each over 2 meters long, gently tapped against the floor with a chilling rhythm. Though distorted, the scaly face unmistakably belonged to Gu Shuangpu. When the creature opened its mouth, a long serpent tongue flickered out, accompanied by a series of chilling hisses that filled the air with revulsion and dread. The moment Old Man Ma clearly saw the monster, his face drained of all color. He cried out in panic, "This is the spirit fuse technique. He has fused himself with the twin-tailed jade serpent." The bald man's expression twisted in furious alarm. The spirit fuse technique. Wasn't that a long-lost forbidden art? Does he truly not fear being erased from the cycle of reincarnation? Without hesitation, he fixed his gaze on the serpent monster, as if facing a mortal enemy, and hastily slapped his storage pouch. A flash of silver light appeared, and a restriction command medallion landed in his hand. He exhaled a breath of spirit chi onto the medallion and tossed it into the air. Just as he began urgently chanting an incantation, the monster within the barrier moved. Its gloomy gaze swept across the 3 cultivators outside before its tongue flickered rapidly. Suddenly, it split open its cheek and spat out a glob of purple-black liquid toward them. Seeing this, the bald man abruptly halted his incantation and pointed at the command medallion. The medallion burst forth with silver radiance, releasing over 10 silver spell seals that shot toward the barrier. Each seal roared like a dragon upon impact. The barrier flashed violently, growing thicker as countless streams of silver light gathered toward its apex. When the purple-black liquid struck the barrier, a portion of the silver light instantly turned pitch black, the corruption spreading rapidly across an area nearly 3 meters wide. A vicious expression appeared on the serpent monster's face. At the same moment, its twin tails slammed against the ground, propelling its body forward in a streak of green light. Its claws struck the barrier with terrifying force. Boom! A massive hole tore open in the once sturdy barrier as though it were no more than fragile paper. Delight flickered across the monster's face as its form blurred, preparing to escape. The bald man's face filled with horror. He spat out a white rod from his mouth, forming a shimmering curtain of light around his body. Old Man Ma reacted just as swiftly. With a grim expression, he summoned his ruler-shaped magic treasure, enveloping himself in a protective layer of light. Both men knew all too well how terrifying an early nascent soul cultivator became after employing the spirit-fused technique. Even disregarding its divine abilities, its cultivation strength alone rivaled that of a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator. As the monster was about to flee, the two prepared to engage it in a battle of attrition, unwilling to strike first unless forced to do so. At that moment, Han Li let out a soft sigh tinged with helplessness. He decided to act. With a faint blur, he crossed the short distance in an instant, appearing directly before the tear in the barrier. The serpentine monster froze for a split second upon seeing Han Li blocking its escape route. A murderous glint flashed through its eyes. Without any warning whatsoever, it opened its mouth and spat out another stream of purple-black venom. "Be careful, fellow Taoist." Han dodged quickly. Both the bald man and Old Man Ma shouted in alarm. It was not born of concern, but necessity. Facing this monster already strained their limits, there was no room for further losses, especially with the looming threat of the Spell Warrior army. Han Li, however, appeared utterly indifferent to their cries. He calmly watched the incoming venom, an odd glimmer flashing through his eyes. Raising his arm deliberately, he bent his fingers. Flickering blue flames instantly enveloped his hand as he reached forward directly toward the poison. The hearts of the two nascent soul cultivators sank. The serpent monster, seeing this, spat out another glob of venom without the slightest hesitation. A nearly imperceptible sneer curved Han Li's lips. Blue radiance burst forth from his eyes. In an instant, a blinding explosion of light erupted between Han Li and the monster. The radiance flickered wildly several times before abruptly dimming. The bald man and Old Man Ma hurriedly steadied themselves and looked over only to be struck speechless. The serpent monster wore an expression of ecstatic triumph, as if it had already escaped the barrier. Yet its entire body was now encased in glittering crystal, transformed into a lifelike blue ice sculpture. As for the venom, it had frozen mid-spit, forming a slender thread of ice extending nearly a meter from its mouth. At some unknown moment, Han Li had appeared behind the monster. His flame-wreathed hand rested calmly on the back of its neck. Han Li withdrew his hand and regarded the frozen figure coolly. As expected, this spirit-fused creature has only just come into being. Though it possessed intelligence, its experience was far too shallow. There was nothing to fear. He raised his other hand. Dense arcs of golden lightning burst forth from his palm, striking the ice sculpture and weaving into a fine net of crackling gold. Blue radiance and golden light intertwined before erupting violently. Boom! The ice sculpture shattered into countless inch-sized fragments. Amid the storm of blue light, a fist-sized purple-black object shot out, only to be ensnared by the golden net. Inhuman wails immediately rang out. A cold glint flashed through Han Li's eyes. He clenched the hand controlling the lightning. The golden net constricted sharply, collapsing into a burst of blinding brilliance before vanishing without a trace. With a shrill screech, the golden radiance engulfed the demon nascent, reducing it to a wisp of smoke that quickly scattered into nothingness. It was said that the spirit-fused technique was an exceptionally vicious ancient devil Dao art. Naturally, the demon nascent born from such a technique was likewise extraordinarily vulnerable to divine devilbane lightning. Unable to even employ instant movement to flee, it was swiftly annihilated. In the distance, the bald man stood with his jaw slack, utterly incapable of forcing out a single word. As for Old Man Ma, though his expression remained outwardly composed, his eyes were opened wide, betraying the shock that rendered him speechless. Hanli had long anticipated their reaction and maintained his calm demeanor. He summoned the storage pouch lying on the ground, along with the blue trident, into his hands. After briefly inspecting them with his spiritual sense, he tossed both items toward the bald man. Glancing at the two, Hanli spoke slowly and evenly. Although we killed him, his magic treasures and storage pouch should be returned to the controlling spirit sect intact. That way they will have nothing to contest. The bald man snapped out of his daze at once. Without hesitation, he nodded vigorously. Brother Han's words are entirely reasonable. We shall proceed exactly as you suggest. Old Man Ma's lips twitched several times, yet no words emerged. In the end, he could only put away his ruler-shaped magic treasure with an awkward expression. Hanli's earlier slaying of the black-robed man could be attributed to carelessness and luck. But this time he had killed empty-handed a spirit-fused monster whose strength rivaled that of a mid-nascent soul cultivator, an opponent far beyond what either of them could handle. Without any discussion, both men reached the same conclusion. Elder Han of the Drifting Cloud sect likely possessed the power to contend with any opponent below the late nascent soul stage. Once this thought took root, neither of them could maintain a composed appearance. Hanli said indifferently, "Since this matter has been resolved, I will return to rest. If the spell warriors make a move, summon me. Brother Han, please go ahead. We will naturally keep watch over this area." The bald man replied, his voice unconsciously tinged with respect. Hanli smiled faintly, waved his sleeve, and departed from the hall. The earlier display of celestial ice flames and divine devilbane lightning had been a forced measure. Had he not acted decisively, the serpentine monster would have escaped, leaving behind endless trouble. The bald man and Old Man Ma would have been hard-pressed to stop it. Moreover, now that he had condensed a nascent soul, Hanli no longer felt the need to conceal his true strength. His circumstances were vastly different from his days in the scattered star seas. Back then, his cultivation was shallow, and he was a stranger in a dangerous land. Any exposure could have drawn lethal attention. But now, having entered the nascent soul realm, he stood among the upper echelons of the cultivation world. There were only a handful who could truly threaten him, and thus he no longer felt much apprehension about revealing himself. Furthermore, with the Mulan invasion underway, it was impossible to continue hiding his abilities. At the very least, the Ghost Spirit sect and Marquis Nanlong's faction already knew of his true strength from the events of the Mulan Plains treasure hunt. Since that was the case, he might as well reveal enough power to intimidate any insignificant schemers. Otherwise, if others mistook him for weak, it would only invite needless trouble. Of course, Hanli would never casually reveal all of his trump cards. As he walked, he recalled the strange sensation he had felt when the purple apex flames enveloped the demon nascent. Moments earlier, he had combined the purple apex flames with the celestial ice flames to freeze the monster instantly. Yet afterward, when he focused on the purple apex flames again, they felt somewhat unstable. It seemed that wielding their full might truly required a higher level of cultivation, just as he had suspected. With a trace of self-mockery, Hanli slowly made his way back to his residence. Watching Hanli leave, Old Man Ma let out a bitter smile. "Brother Lu, it seems we misjudged him. Fellow Taoist Han's abilities are unfathomably profound, far beyond ours." A look of admiration appeared on the bald man's face. "Indeed. Though his cultivation is only at the early nascent soul stage, those blue flames and golden lightning are enough for him to suppress even mid-stage nascent soul cultivators." Old Man Ma smiled faintly. "Still, this worked out in our favor. With such a powerful ally, we have nothing to fear from the invading spell warriors." "That's true." The bald man nodded, then frowned slightly. "However, I have never heard of such blue flames before. As for the golden lightning, I seem to recall something about it, but I can't quite remember. Brother Ma, do you recognize it?" The old man pondered briefly, a faint chill creeping into his heart. "No, this is also the first time I've ever seen such golden lightning. Its power is terrifying, so incisive that even an almost incorporeal nascent soul could not escape." "Let it be," the bald man said clearly, unwilling to dwell further on the matter. "Regardless of what great techniques fellow Taoist Han cultivates, it is fortunate for us." He paused, then added, "We still need to discuss tomorrow's matters." Old Man Ma was startled. "What do you mean by tomorrow's matters?" A cold gleam flashed in the bald man's eyes as he spoke sinisterly. "Since the Mulan sent a spy to sabotage the formation, why don't we repay them in kind?" Realization dawned on Old Man Ma. Brother Lu, you mean? It's quite simple. The two lowered their voices, whispering rapidly. Their words echoed faintly through the empty hall. Moments later, the bald man burst into wild laughter, clearly delighted with the brilliance of his plan. At noon the next day, when the blazing sun reached the center of the sky, deep and thunderous war drums rolled across the land. From the distant horizon, the Spell Warrior army advanced once more, this time escorting a colossal beast at the center of their ranks. At first glance, it resembled a rhinoceros enlarged dozens of times over. A lustrous blue horn, more than 3 meters long, jutted from its nose. Its enormous body was clad in gleaming black battle armor, etched with floating talismanic runes, radiating an aura of immense value. Despite its massive size, its 4 hooves seemed to tread upon drifting blue clouds. Moving with astonishing agility, there was not the slightest hint of clumsiness. Seated atop the beast was a woman in her prime, barefoot. Delicately beautiful, yet a hostile aura faintly radiated from her cold, wandering gaze. She wore simple short robes of dark green. Ku Yao and the shriveled spell warrior followed closely at the beast's side, their manner respectful as if attending upon royalty. Before they even reached the Yellow Dragon Mountains, the green-robed woman cried out softly in surprise. Ku Yao hurriedly asked, "What is it? Has Master Lo discovered something?" An odd look crossed her face as she replied slowly, "Yes, something is amiss." The shriveled spell warrior stiffened, worry surfacing in his eyes. Could there have been a change? Has that person failed? Not necessarily, the woman said indifferently. The two of you should go take a look. With that, she closed her eyes and fell silent. Ku Yao and the shriveled spell warrior exchanged glances before extending their spiritual senses forward. Moments later, shock filled their expressions. Ku Yao exclaimed in disbelief, "What's going on? The mist has completely dispersed. Didn't we agree that the restriction would break midway through the assault, allowing us to wipe out all the cultivators? How did it vanish entirely?" The shriveled spell warrior replied hesitantly, "I don't know. Let's advance first and investigate properly before deciding our next move." The woman atop the beast remained silent, and thus the spell warrior army pressed forward. However, due to the shriveled spell warrior's warning, their vigilance was noticeably heightened. Nothing unusual occurred as they crossed the short distance to the area they had reached the day before. The endless sea of dark green mist was gone, revealing the mountain range and the jade platforms atop each peak. Yet the once refined structures were now ruined and scorched black, some still releasing wisps of smoke. Combined with the oppressive silence and the absence of any cultivators, the scene was desolate and grim. The spell warrior army parted to either side as the green-robed woman slowly urged her mount forward. The soldiers looked upon her graceful figure with reverence, suppressing their usual restlessness. Ku Yao and the shriveled spell warrior followed close behind. The woman surveyed the scene with bright, wandering eyes. After a long silence, she brushed back her hair, a cold smile forming on her lips. "This won't do," the shriveled spell warrior said uneasily. "Although the mist is gone, there are still restrictions interfering with my spiritual sense. I can't probe any deeper." Ku Yao added, puzzled, "That's right. What we're seeing may only be an illusion. If that person truly succeeded, he should have already joined us." The woman's voice turned icy. "Then are you suggesting we simply stand here and do nothing?" "Of course not," the shriveled spell warrior quickly replied. "We only need to proceed more cautiously. It's possible that person succeeded only partially and escaped afterward. In that case, the cultivators here may have already abandoned this place and retreated." The green-robed woman smiled faintly, her expression indifferent. "Such speculation is meaningless. Given the enemy's level of cultivation, our chances of victory are exceedingly high. That said, we must not grow careless. A single miscalculation could result in death or capture." Ku Yao hesitated before speaking. "Then, Sage Lei means," the woman replied calmly, her voice steady and unhurried. "Regardless of whether this is a trap or not, our objective remains unchanged. We have come to break the formation. Proceed according to the original plan. It is worth sacrificing a few men to discern the true situation. Time is our most precious resource. We have already received intelligence that the various powers of Heavenly South are jointly dispatching reinforcements. It will take them 2 to 3 months to arrive. During this window, we must push our main forces towards Soaring Heaven's City and seize it at the optimal moment. If we allow the 9 Nations Union and the other factions to consolidate, first even victory would cost us far too much. Then we shall proceed, as Sage Lu commands, the shriveled spell warrior said, after a brief hesitation. As for Ku Yao, he had no particular attachment to the lives of low-grade spell warriors and raised no objection. The woman nodded slightly. Her lips moved soundlessly as she sent out a voice transmission to an unseen party. Soon after, nearly 100 spell warriors dressed in similar attire began advancing toward the summit of the Yellow Dragon Mountains under the leadership of a core formation spell warrior. Those 100 figures gradually shrank into black dots as they passed through the area once filled with mist and approached the mountain. Their advance encountered no resistance. When the group reached the mountaintop unscathed, the shriveled spell warrior finally relaxed, a smile spreading across his face. It seems this place truly has been abandoned. We can have the others begin searching. Given how hastily they retreated, they must have left plenty behind. The woman replied coldly, "Do not rush, continue observing." The shriveled spell warrior stiffened at her words and dared not speak further. At that moment, the 100 spell warriors had begun searching a jade platform and a half-burned structure. From time to time, they uncovered spirit stones and miscellaneous materials. Their faces lit up with delight as they shamelessly pocketed the spoils, stuffing them into their storage pouches. The spell warrior army was composed of numerous Mulan tribes of varying sizes. Aside from resources acquired from spirit stone mines and similar sources, the spoils of war belonged to whoever claimed them. Seeing this from outside, the rest of the army began to grow restless. They were filled with envy. This was an opportunity to obtain treasures without risk, hardship, or bloodshed. Who knew how many valuable items were hidden within those ruined buildings? Before long, even Ku Yao and the shriveled spell warrior could no longer remain calm. "Sage Lu, look," Ku Yao ventured cautiously. Most of the spell warriors in the army came from their respective tribes. Naturally, neither of them wanted their own people to miss such an opportunity, especially given their constant shortage of cultivation resources. Meanwhile, the 100 spell warriors currently looting belonged to a minor tribe of little influence. The gains they had already made were more than sufficient for them. The green-robed woman remained unmoved, as though she had not heard them at all. Instead, her eyes narrowed slightly, a hint of puzzlement flickering across her gaze. Seeing this, Ku Yao and the shriveled spell warrior exchanged uneasy looks and fell silent. After the time it took to finish a cup of tea, the 100 spell warriors had already scoured nearly a third of the mountaintop. Only then did the woman speak. "The two of you will each dispatch another 100 men. Have them dismantle the remaining restrictions as they proceed. There is no need to sweep the entire mountain with spiritual sense. I will not permit anyone else to enter." "Yes, we obey Sage Lu's command." Delighted, both men immediately sent instructions to their respective tribes. Soon 200 more spell warriors poured onto the mountaintop, swarming through the remaining buildings like ravenous wolves. "With this many people, my magic power won't be able to sustain it much longer." Old Man Ma's voice suddenly echoed from somewhere within the Yellow Dragon Mountains. The bald man sighed regretfully. It's truly a pity that none of the Mulan Grand Sages stepped into the trap. Almost as soon as his words fell, the entire mountaintop began to quake violently. The 300 spell warriors present were struck with panic. Without waiting for orders, they scattered in every direction. The 3 core formation cultivators leading the groups were the fastest, crossing 100 meters in the blink of an eye. But even they could not escape the vast perimeter of the formation. Brilliant lights of every color burst forth from the mountaintop. The green mist surged back with terrifying speed, rolling through the air and once more engulfing the Yellow Dragon Mountains in an endless sea of green haze. Seeing this, Ku Yao and the shriveled spell warrior turned pale, their expressions ugly. As for the green-robed woman astride the colossal beast, her gaze remained icy and composed. "What a pity," she said emotionlessly. "It was a trap after all. If Gu Shuangpu had not been forced to act, perhaps he could have remained hidden longer and achieved even greater results." Ku Yao clenched his fists tightly as he stared into the mist. The core formation spell warrior he had sent inside was a favored direct descendant. Never imagining such an outcome, he felt a surge of urgency. "Sage Lu, those inside." The woman shot him a glance and replied indifferently, "Save your breath." With the abilities of those nascent soul cultivators, dealing with core formation cultivators is effortless. They are likely already dead. Ku Yao's expression flickered before hardening with ferocity. "If that is the case, Sage Li, allow me to lead the charge to break the formation." I can release my fire spirit essence and destroy it in a single breath. Then we can incinerate whatever remains of those cultivators inside. The woman raised an eyebrow. Your fire spirit essence? Very well. Since you are resolved, I will have the giant rhino accompany you. However, it would be best to reserve your essence for a critical moment. Also, she continued, coolly pay special attention to that youth who killed Sir Heavenweep. I suspect he is the same cultivator who destroyed the physical body of Sage Mu of the Heavenly Wind tribe. If that is true, his abilities are formidable, especially those strange blue flames. Carelessness will only lead to your death. The shriveled cultivator's expression changed, fear flashing across his face. He is the one who destroyed Sage Mu's physical body. I heard he possesses the legendary lightning movement. Is that true? Sage Wen, the woman, replied coldly, your techniques are weakest against opponents who can close distance instantly. Do not engage him under any circumstances. Leave him to me. A sharp glint shone in her eyes as she spoke proudly. I cultivate the soft wind arts. My speed is no less than his lightning movement. No matter how lethal his devil flames or golden lightning may be, if they cannot strike me, they cannot harm me. As for his other abilities, he is still only an early nascent soul cultivator. How could he possibly contend with me? That is reassuring, the shriveled cultivator said, visibly relieved. Only Sage Lu is capable of facing him. Against the sage who once rivaled Saintess Tianlan of the Soaring tribe, he is surely outmatched. At the mention of that name, the woman's expression darkened. She snorted coldly. Saintess Tianlan. The shriveled cultivator was startled, immediately recalling that Sage Lu regarded that battle as her sole defeat and despised hearing it mentioned. He muttered, scrambling to change the subject. With a wave of her sleeve, the woman regained her composure. Enough, we must break the formation, cease all idle talk and commence the assault. Yes, both Ku Yao and the shriveled cultivator answered in unison, greatly relieved. Within the dark mist, a headless corpse of a core formation spell warrior lay motionless. Not far away, a streak of azure light flashed. Han Li glanced briefly at the corpse before raising his hand, recalling the blue light back into his palm, then flying onward. As he moved calmly through the mist, Han Li inspected the spell warrior's storage pouch only to feel disappointment. It contained nothing but miscellaneous junk, no valuable spirit techniques or treasures. He frowned slightly and let out a long sigh. At that moment, thunderous war drums echoed from beyond the sea of green mist. Powerful waves of spiritual chi surged from that direction, followed by a deep, earth-shaking roar that caused even the mist to churn. Han Li's expression remained tranquil. He swept his gaze around coldly, then raised his head toward the sky. After a brief moment of contemplation, a sneer tugged at his lips. A scarlet-red fireball formed in his hand. With a casual flick, he reduced the nearby corpse to ashes. Turning around, he flew toward the center of the mist, vanishing without a trace. At the heart of the mist, a strange phenomenon unfolded. All previously damaged buildings had been restored to pristine condition, while cultivators moved through the mist, scattering toward various locations. Old Man Ma and the Bald Man hovered 100 meters above the structures, standing side by side. Both stared solemnly in the direction of the approaching spell warrior army, their expressions grave. That's all for today's content. See you in the next part. Support me by becoming a member. It will give me more motivation. Thank you so much.